Let's just do an AMA. Ask me anything. Okay. Today on Trekland Tuesdays Live with me, Dr. Trek Larry Nemecek, coming at you here from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47. And yes, Trekland Treks, your customized, unique location site tours. Yeah, it's an away mission of your very own with my help somewhere across Southern California. TreklandTreks.com. Yes, welcome back. It's a Tuesday for another Tuesday of some sanity, clarity, and a bigger picture in all things Star Trek. I almost feel like today the bigger picture is so big that it's off the screen. It's oozing out of the frame. This week I mulled over several things. And I just thought, let's just do an AMA. Let's just do an Ask Me Anything. There's several things I do know. I know that Bruce Horak's Indiegogo is still going for his documentary, Boldly Going. Indiegogo played Hemmer, right? We had him as a guest on the Trek Files a couple of weeks ago. If you heard that, the Trek Files have been excellent. I also know that a lot of people are buzzing about the Strange New Worlds trailer. And that's cool. That's what trailers are for, to get people buzzing. I'm almost in a mood after a year and a half of going, just get on with it. And people are parsing every frame and nuance and looking at, obviously, Captain Batel is rescued in the conclusion of the world's longest. I know Mr. Warfire, Best of Both Worlds, is the memorable cliffhanger, but that was only 3 months. And yet, what's more impactful coming out of that for 10 episodes a season after nearly 2 years, or the good old Things Move Slower in Those Days without social media and Best of Both Worlds for just 3 months in 1990 for a 26-episode season? These are all good things to ponder. But it's when you see the whole season laid out with the titles, and the Hegemony Part 2 is just the first title of many. To me, it takes away, and you see the person who was in jeopardy living life, kind of takes away from the sting of the cliffhanger. But hey, we live in streaming land now, so there is that. So everyone's having a good time analyzing the trailer to death, looking at all that. That's cool too. And we can talk about that today if you'd like to. That's an AMA kind of invites that, right? We're doing the chat at the beginning, most of all. So I also toyed a little bit with, for some reason, my mind has been on Paradise Lost, the DS9 two-parter about declaring martial law on Earth at the first reaction to the Founders scare. And for obvious reasons. And we've had the LA protests, which have been escalated crazy, out of control. Not out of control when you consider that this is all about a small scale protest. It's exactly what happened in the Black Lives Matter Sunday. I was thinking last night, I saw the roots of this kind of TV blowing up something into a bigger situation that was just because the frame of our TV is only so big. If you really have a lot going on, you should do what some of my favorite pundits do, and they do a split screen where they show you 8 or 12 different events going on at once. But to have a camera in 1 or 2 places can give a distorted view of scale. And I actually go back to before politics, before manipulation. I remember a moment when I was a young buck in news, and we had a TV on in our newsroom on CNN, when CNN was the only 24-hour news there was. And there was flooding going on in Los Angeles when I was still in Oklahoma. And there was flooding and heavy rain. But there was a place along Pacific Coast Highway, Highway 1, in Malibu, between Malibu and Santa Monica, where there was a famous florist, as in seller of flowers. And basically it was a T intersection where the coast highway ran along the coast, and then it came down out of the mountains and teed there. And there was a lot of runoff water coming down the hill to the coast. And there was a florist there there was a gorge, kind of a creek bed that they'd built bridges over the years. Well, this had flooded so hard that all the water came down through this gorge, and over time was washing away all the bridges and the porches and all this at this florist. It was a very famous florist, and anybody who had driven up and down Highway 1, with the beach on the other side, for 40 or 50 years, everybody had passed by, all the locals had passed by that florist. And CNN, somebody, maybe local news, CNN picked it up, but they had a camera sitting there because it was made good pictures, and it was this roaring water coming down. And over time, over the hours, it gradually washed away that, and then it got into the underpinnings of the main building, and it kind of caved into the water. And the rest of the country was sitting there going, oh my God, look, it's flooding in Los Angeles. It's flooding in Los Angeles. It's like, no, this is the camera at one spot, and you're seeing real time, slow but sure, undergirding of these bridges and this building. And eventually, yeah, it collapsed into the gorge. The water rushed. It was high. Did we ever swing across and just look across the street? No, but this one building made good pictures. Now, that was nobody's agenda other than CNN's editors going, this is captivating television. This is great television, and people betting on when the undergirding, when the undersupports and struts were going to give way and cave into the gorge and all of that. But I remember sitting there and Charles, our wire editor, going, this is one place. If it's really flooding in LA, why don't we look at the other views? And I remember thinking at the time, well, this is kind of just like, why, whose point is this serving? Is it excitement? Is it manipulation? Is it, no, the world deserves to know the fate of this little florist shop perched on the gorge overhang at PCH in LA. I've thought about that many times over the years because people more nefariously are able to pick out one image because we're so damn visually oriented and put a camera on one thing, and people, the further away you are, the easier it is to take that one image, and it might be bad, it might be ghostly, and blow up into something more. And that really came back to me during the BLM summer, when you'd have thousands of peaceful protesters and you'd have one or two inevitable provocateurs around the edges do the car burning or firebomb a place. And then it was very interesting, as people manipulated, to have the false flag people and have the guys dressing up in the black and everything running around who were caught on camera. I meant to research this. I know at least 2 or 3 or 4 of them were exposed and came to court. But a lot of people to this day will think about that was 5 summers ago, 5 years ago, and they'll think about, the city's burned. It's like, no. And then on top of all of that, what was happening would be over 2 blocks, 3 blocks. Cities are big things. It wasn't so you have to, again, check the sources, double check the reality, the logic, the tantalization of an image, whether it's that florist shop falling into the gorge at the hands of Mother Nature, or pictures of fire. What is really the scope and the scale here? I've thought about that florist shop a lot in the last few days. A lot of people around the country, and some of you all here in the chat today, are talking about how's things going. It's kind of slow moving. I'm an hour and a half east of where we've always been since we moved to LA, around in the Burbank, Hollywood area. Now, and I get back over. It hasn't really slowed us down much here in Trek World, but my thoughts are there with everybody who's it's one of those edgy situations, and it's the bottom line is emotion over rationality, and it has made me think of the 2-parter on DS9 about martial law, Admiral Layton, right? Paradise Lost. And Cisco's cool head about knocking down the need for martial law. That was about fear. That was more of a McCarthyist tone. And you saw that a lot on Star Trek. When things would turn inward, it was one thing to talk about your external enemies, Klingons and Romulans and Cardassians, oh my. And the one thing about the thread of the shapeshifters, why it was so good, it was the Twilight Zone episode. What's happening on Maple Street? I'm forgetting the title. But it's looking at the demons inside us, even when we aren't aware of them. We have our blinders on, we don't think about it. And Star Trek's always had, boogeymen. Star Trek, to deliver the mess in the best of times, Star Trek delivering a message, right? Delivering a morality tale, a parable, a fable. The moral of the story is, hopefully it's more like subtext that makes you go, stop and think. And at times, Star Trek has been really subtle and cool, and even giving you a message that can go in different directions, like Return of the Archons. Are we talking about communism groupthink? Are we talking about organized religious dogma groupthink? Ooh, it's like a good painting that makes everybody react in different ways. And sometimes Star Trek's been a little on the nose. And before you jump on Discovery, I'll just take you back to everybody's beloved anti-racism show, Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, from the original series, 60s too, which to me always made me cringe, not because it wasn't trying to do good by giving you a racism story and show the stupidity of it, and it's all about point of view, but the fact that it was just so obvious. It's done a lot of good over the years. A lot of Star Trek, even when it's on the nose and obvious, still manages to do a lot of good. I know. I guess this is more a differentiation of the craft and the sophistication versus, Star Trek being a messenger. So that has gone back. The drumhead on Next Generation was a little more McCarthyist, but still had its point and was incredible drama and all of that. So I've just dived in here with the things on my mind. I'm thinking about the Strange New Worlds courtroom drama was a thinker. It was a thinker. It's one of those times of whiplash where there's cool stuff happening. There's troubling social political things happening that are even affecting our our zeitgeist and karma when we're trying to enjoy Star Trek. There's things going on in the world that make us want to go and embrace Star Trek and find comfort food in it, or find some answers. And of course, it takes you all back to the unsettled 60s with Vietnam and the ecology movement and nukes and overpopulation and all the scary berry things that made people find solace in the fact that Star Trek was about a future where somehow humanity at least got beyond all this crap. We had enough of a united planet to go out in space together and encounter what was going on out in space, out in the galaxy. And of course, the storytelling device was giving people reassurance and showing what that looked like, right? And exposing our demons in the guise of aliens or things we didn't understand. Oh, that Horta is not a killing monster. It's really just a mother. It's about as basic as it gets. So I'm just throwing out some threads here. Well, it's an atypical week is what I'm trying to say here. Even when we're doing this. I haven't done an AMA in at least a year, probably longer than a year, just because I always like to have a set topic. And maybe I should have gone to the thing about it's being a whiplash. And at the same time, we're celebrating Strange New Worlds finally coming here, and people are micromanaging and, analyzing every frame of the teaser. I'm not going to do that here. You can do that in 47 million other places. My attitude right now is just, okay, let's just get on with it. Not to rush things, because this is the only Trek of the year. Apparently, Academy still won't premiere until next year. And even with all the good things we've heard about it, I've heard about it, that it may be the best of the modern Treks yet. Between that and all the uncertainty surrounding the future of Paramount, much less the future of streaming, much less the future of current administration of Star Trek, and where the series are going, and the current future of the movie slate at Paramount until somebody's in the driver's seat. So much in flux right now, and I realize it's leading to a little bit of unease. So if nothing else, there's no guilt in enjoying your Star Trek. That's probably a great motivator to go find comfort and also maybe find some solace, maybe find some solutions, find some wisdom in the words of Kirk and Picard and Sisko and Janeway and all of their, and Archer and all of their kith and kin, and Michael, up and down the line. It brings back to me. I always remember thinking with the Paradise Lost two-parter that I was confused because we got a distorted picture of, and I'm going to dive into the chat here. I haven't forgot you there. I think we had a slow start, but it's picking up now. I know. I'll do this. But let me throw one more thing out. Totally as a canonista here, the thing about the two-parter about martial law and letting, do you have civil rights or do you give them up in the name of security? That goes back to Ben Franklin. And it was the debate all through 9/11, which Ron Moore got to explore in Galactica, but which 10 years before 9/11, he and Ira and the gang on DS9 were exploring on DS9, way before it was an issue nationally. It was totally an intellectual exercise. When you're under attack, how fiercely do you cling to your civil rights in the name of like security and sending in the the thug soldiers to protect you when they might be trotting on something else. And that's what was the gist of that two-parter. What brought to mind though was I didn't understand the overlay of where the Federation was the governing body government of all the member planets, but how much independence do the member planets have? And over the years, we've had references in the modern era, in let's say 24th century, Picard, Janeway, Sisko time. There's a Vulcan security. You could say, oh, well, Enterprise and Archer, even Kirk's time, things were evolving. But in the modern era we think of, before the future jump to the 32nd, how much autonomy did each individual member planet retain? Now, there's a model in California, back home in Oklahoma, I know. So in many states where, say, the state division is a county, and the chief law enforcer is a sheriff who's usually elected. Incorporated cities usually have their own police department, as well as fire department and maybe even ambulance service. But sometimes a city might want to be incorporated, but yet it's so small or it's constituted as such that they don't want to fund their own police department, and so they contract with that county sheriff. So normally, if nothing else, a county sheriff is the hands-on frontline law enforcement for unincorporated area. And this is a very American model. I don't know how it extends Germany, Austria, England, Australia. But in the States, politically, governmentally, the agencies and the bodies, the reason you might have a sheriff. Now, some places, Las Vegas, if you watch CSI, you know this, San Francisco City and San Francisco County are physically the same area. And so they have a joint city-county. You'll see that. Or in other things. I've seen city-county health departments where the city doesn't have a health department, just shares it with the county. But most of the time, the county sheriff, hands-on, besides maybe doing something like running the jail, they are the frontline law enforcement for the unincorporated and often rural areas, which, means you get slow response and you may feel like a second-class citizen, but you want to live in the country. You didn't want to live in a city limit, so there you go. Some small cities may also contract with the sheriff's department. So you have that. But I say all this because the one thing that the two-parter did with the martial law show was the Federation president and the Federation admiral are making decisions about what's happening on Earth. And just because of the scare, this isn't about later on the Breen terrorist attack that brings the Breen into the Dominion War when we're actually in the Dominion War. But this is third or fourth season, and it's just the mounting chameleon changeling scare, right? Who's really a changeling and who's not? And Leighton wants to take it all the way and have martial law declared and everybody's under wraps and there's changeling detectors up everywhere. But what always bothered me is a Starfleet admiral and the Federation president are locked in this debate about what's happening. Is this happening? Is that going to be the same for Vulcan and Andoria and Teller Prime and all the member worlds and all the Federation colonies? Is this going to be the same there? Or is this just happening on Earth? And if it is there no Earth government? Is there not a president of Earth? I don't mean the Doctor's holographic goofy character from Proton. That distinguishing between what the planets have, what they've retained, even in the modern era, of their own infrastructure for self-governance, and how much of the Federation speak for the assembly, but individual planets run their own business. Because in Paradise Lost, it feels like whatever the Federation president and Starfleet want to do, just for Earth, they can. Nobody's even mentioning what's going on the other Federation worlds. Is this all about just Earth? There wasn't just a secret Earth attack. There wasn't just a secret chameleon. I keep saying chameleon, changeling. There wasn't just a secret changeling, influx about Earth. At least I don't remember there being one. And now look, they had to suffer. They were suffering from budget so much. You remember the moment when Sisko opens his door, or his dad? They look across from Sisko's restaurant in New Orleans, and there's two Starfleet security guards armed patrolling the streets in New Orleans. I mean, the budget, this was mid-season, and the budget was so bad they could only afford to show you two armed Starfleet combat guys. Okay, well, I felt sorry because they wanted to take on this huge stickler of a thorny issue and have a real relevant show, a lot like the Bell Riots, right? Future tense. That had such an impact. And they had scope on their little TV, the streets and the extras and the cars, and it really had scope with the homeless in the Sanctuary District. Same thing with later on Far Beyond the Stars, and that was just a 1 hour. And I always felt like poor Paradise Lost because it looked like they had to clamp down on budget. And I think some of that budget may have affected the scope that would have maybe fleshed out some of these questions. But it's always bugged me, and still does. We rarely get into the idea of what is that you know all about United Earth in Archer's time because there's no Federation yet. And we know that individual planets still carry, like I said, there is still a Vulcan security that's independent of Federation security. Is that by choice? Do all planets do that? Is that the Vulcans? Hey, we were the oldest guys. We're your oldest buds. We demand we get to keep the Vishar. Anyway, when I go back to that episode, aside from the thought-provoking thoughts that it yields about security versus civil rights, it brings up that little Canonista background debate too. And I've never seen anybody really tackle that. Maybe somebody in a novel. I'm sure the novels that get into Federation politics do that as well. But nobody's ever had a standoff. What if the leadership of Earth wants to differ with the Federation leadership? Just because the Federation is headquartered on Earth, which is now a moot point in the 32nd century. But back in the mainstream here, what happens when the Federation wishes go against what the Earth planetary wishes are? That's something that no one has ever explored. And again, I think maybe they get into this in some of the book. I've never read all the aughts and teens book series that have now been rendered moot, except for those who waded through them for 10, 15 years. I'm going to hush for a minute and see if anybody has got a super chat question or wants to jump in and talking about what's going on here. This is interesting. The second part of your message was too long, but you're saying, Christoph, are cable networks disappearing in the U.S.? Over here, most cable providers have morphed from TV to TV plus internet to internet and digital TV. That's kind of happening here, but the U.S. is so big as a country that the original just cable companies was a big deal. And cable, was a huge physical. They've spent millions over these decades with the infrastructure of physical coax cable everywhere, and converting over to streaming. That's it's kind of like I just upgraded my house to steam and now I'm going to electricity or to coal. this whole thing about what the hell is media doing, the landscape evolving and changing, and it's one of several factors that's affecting our trek, even that I keep going to. But the general perception is our cable networks disappearing right now in the Viacom, Paramount, CBS, miasma. The cable networks are seen as the dead weight, the aging dead weight of the thing, even more so than linear CBS even is, because at least, and this is starting to diversify too, but CBS had sports contracts, and sports is the last thing that you don't know in advance, that can't be spun. The outcome is actually not known and has a sense of drama, and people, supposedly people from all political persuasions and interests and whatever the hell, is people find a way to be divided by these days. People can overcome that just to root for, their teams geographically. And then when they win the championship, they can go out and riot and nobody thinks a thing about it and burn 10 times more cars than ever happens in a political fight here in the States. I've seen people pissed about that too. People making the argument that there's been 10 times more carnage and damage done after a college sports championship around the country, any city, than what was going on in LA recently, until things were escalated and aggravated. Yeah. But yes, cable is seen as the dying dead industry. No one is putting new money into cable. And as far as it evolving, a lot of the bandwidth for grabbing into new technologies is already being taken by either startups or by some of the older legacy companies. And that's how they're already finding their way. And a lot of the older legacy companies already own cables. So there's very few of the startup cables owned by them, self-owned. Hey, Christoph. Yeah, well, you're welcome. Look, I'm not on the ground. I'm sure the viral moment of the Australian reporter getting hit by a rubber bullet, the guy behind sure seemed to take aim. I don't know if he was aiming at her or if he was aiming at her cameraman, which is actually the point of view that you're getting, right? If you think it actually looks like he was trying to hit the cameraman and he hit her on the way, because she was right on the same line of sight. I almost want to say, I'm a Star Trek optimist. I'm a Will Rogers optimist. I have to think we're going to get through this. I know a lot of people are anxious. They're burning all kinds of energy right now. It's putting a sheen, a filter over everybody not being at their best right now, and edgy and anxious. But it is a learning experiment. And I guess I feel like a Kirk speech here where humanity has to get down and dig, or a Cisco speech. It can't be what's about utopia can't be handed. You have to earn it. But there's something to be said. We watch the police and the attack dogs being turned on the Selma protesters, right? We watch the National Guard, those young kids moved in and put in an impossible place, and idiots opening fire on the students at Kent State, right? We watch those, and Kent State might be faded color, but it's definitely black and white for Selma. And sometimes when things are safely in black and white, whether it's from a war or it's from a crisis or even a natural disaster, that black and white patina makes it maybe seem a little less real. And maybe even though you visually are aware of the horrors of war, the horrors of natural disaster, when people die, whether it's because of humans or not, just the passing of history. We're so arrogant. Well, it's a painting, not a photograph. It didn't really happen. Oh, well, it's a photograph, not a movie. It didn't really happen. Oh, well, it's a jerky black and white movie. It didn't really happen. Oh, well, it's color, but look at the low res on that. It's like every generation has a way to kind of just psychologically, even not intentionally, make less of, even when there's photographic evidence of something. It's like, well, what level of photography are we talking about? And even to see those images, there's something that you've grown up seeing, the attack dogs in Selma. you've grown up seeing. I don't know. I wonder at what point, the bodies jumping out of the Twin Towers on 9/11 day. Does that still carry a wallop for people? I I'm just saying that what we're going through right now is exactly what it's one thing to talk about all the years of the civil rights struggle and the head-to-head conflict, all the years of the Vietnam protests and head-to-head struggle. And the arc of history bends toward justice, but it bends slowly, as King said. But we know now that what all the kids were protesting for against Vietnam was absolutely correct. And Nixon was corrupt and with Madame Chenault, and actually the definition of treason, getting a war extended just for him to get reelected politically. And Johnson, even knowing about it, but he had they had taps on Nixon's phones because of it, and he couldn't. Anyway, it's a tangled web. And people seeing this live right now, there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of upset and a lot of anger. And I hate to say that we're just humans and we can't learn. We can only learn so much from history. It's like every generation is just doomed to have to go through something unpleasant because we're too stupidly human to learn it once and remember it, or learn it, read it in a history book, or even watch film and photos and know what the Holocaust was, know what Pearl Harbor was, know what the boarding schools were, know what the Zoot Suit riots were, know what Greenwood and Black Wall Street was. Hi, Marina. I'm just saying that it's, we have been here before. There's been pushback. There's been hopeless, people just made so frustrated over the stupidity of humanity at its worst, trying to get up out of the mud and the muck and keep moving forward. Yeah. Oh, hey, Rose, what episode I'm most excited to see in Strange New Worlds in 5 weeks or 37 days? I want to see the wacky holodeck murder mystery thing, only because in a tiny, tiny way I helped with it. And I don't exactly know yet how I helped with it, so we'll see. That's the one that's been in the preview trailers for a long time. I'm just, like I said, my attitude about season 3 Strange News, just get on with it. Just get on with it. I'm going to trust that it's going to be awesome and entertaining and fun, and hopefully not too many canon crumbs we have to stitch back together and retcon. I hope there's no more rampaging timeline busting without a replacement in place. What do I think of the episode titles for season 3? Oh, they're cool. I'm glad to see at least one new alien word or two in a title that has nothing to do with an old existing plot. I guess the Gorn hegemony, well, it was already with the first one. But I love the way that something from fandom that got into charts and star charts that was licensed and then was handed over, and we've had I love how something that came out of fandom becomes canon, like the word hegemony for the Gorn government. That's fun. Ken Forey, that was the word. I was okay. Look, actually, some the celet who ate its tail. Somehow, I don't think we're going to get an actual celet. It'll just be a takeoff on the tiger who ate its tail. Is that what it is? Terrarium. Why do I have this view of like a cage zoo? Who's we're in Moriarty in his holographic cube. I don't know. New Life and New Civilization sounds kind of foundational. It's the finale. We will see. I just want to get on with it. I'm tired of talking and waiting. Yeah. Hi, Mike. Glad to see a Bolian in the new. Yes, notice that. Absolutely. One of these times a Bolian needs some hair so Mateno Hara won't seem like such a singular anomaly. How do we not know that Haro wasn't like wearing a wig because that was a fad that year? Because she was a cadet, right? A fake cadet, though. But there you go. Hey, William, did I get to know the most frequent episodic directors of the Bergman area? Oh, no, Rick Colby, Cliff Bowl, Les Landau, I think I interviewed by phone. I made these stats up years ago to see who had directed the most, and I used them in a lot of stories and things. David Livingston was a producer, and I know David quite well. And David was our open house guest on the 3rd or 4th year of Portal 47, the open house that's open to everybody. Rick Colby passed 5 or 6 years ago before I could get him on Portal, but Rick got to direct the finale of TNG, and then they turned right around and directed the pilot for Voyager. He went right from All Good Things right into Caretaker. And I had several great conversations with him, and he was great just to lay it out on the line. And by the time we talked, it's noisy because it's at were we at Raleigh, or were we at the Italian pasta place there by the lot? But it's noisy because it's like you hear silverware clinking and just a general dull roar of the background. But it comes through. But it had happened after Genevieve had come and gone, and Kate was before airing. But Kate was in, and they were filming, and we talked about the whole shooting of. I was so close to things that we just talked, and it was no big deal. Cliff Bowl was a real hoot. He was a little curmudgeonly, but he cared a little about what he was doing. Had a good interview with him at his car. I have a picture of him. He restored classic cars, and I have this picture. He had a 34 Merc or whatever. It was maroon, and we went out in the garage and took a picture with it. He opened the door, and it was dark because it was still 35 millimeter, and I'm trying to get my strobe right, remotely. But Les Landau, I talked to on the phone, and he is still with us, but I don't think he's out and about for interviews. I've been trying to get in contact with him for 6 or 7 years. Les started as a first and then got to bump up to being a director. Michael Vihar, I never had a chance to talk to. Alan Croker, I think I did a phoner with, but never in person. And some of the other, what was his name? The guy that directed Cause and Effect, I think. Alan Wiener? Anyway, I just loved having lunch with him and his wife, and he was like, I didn't know what the hell we were doing. I didn't try that. I just went with it and stuck with it. I didn't get it. Well, Dr. Corby, I did want to see here. Trelane Gornkirk, not so much. I'll go back to it. Just let Pike be Pike. Let Pike's crew be Pike's crew. But Dr. Corby was going to be part of this, unless everything that happened to Chapel was all just crammed. It makes more sense. Oh, yes. The first bowling, that's in the companion here. For Conspiracy, the episode, first season, Next Generation, they were going to have that captain. They were going to have Captain Reeks be an Andorian, but Rick thought that the original series aliens looked silly, and they didn't want to lean on original series stuff then. But he also thought that the monocolored aliens looked silly, and antenna were bug-eyed monster things. So they let it be a monocolored alien, but they took away the antenna. And so Cliff Bowl was directing Conspiracy, and that's where it comes from. They just named it after him, the bald Andorian. And then to differentiate it further, that's when all the blue radiating lines. But if you notice, it's really kind of a greenish blue, partly the lighting. I really thought he was greenish, and then they went with the blue, and you get them under the ship lights that are more, happy-dappy and neutral looking. But if you notice the blue Boolean lines when they made them bald to be more distinctive, that's when the blue, pronounced blue, radial lines came in. But you've got the long ears, and you've got greenish blue skin. But yes, name for Cliff Bowl. Trek Reviewer, how do I think the episode Lower Deck, you mean the TNG episode original Lower Decks, would have gone if Wesley or Ro were in it? Ro as a lower decker, as a disruptor, maybe as the sand in the gears of it all. It would have been different. Hopefully it would have been entertaining and fun. Wesley, I don't know, what would Wesley had such a pivotal point in First Duty. if he was one of the cadets that were in the spotlight or the ensigns in the spotlight of Lower Decks on TNG, would it be fair to try to equate that where he's like the pivot point? What does he do? He goes and counsels what's his name about his paranoia? I don't know. I don't know. It would be interesting. Bring it on. You're going to revise history. Oh, Rose. What do I think? I think the two current series in the works are going to run on their momentum until something is definitely in place at Paramount HQ, Paramount Global, till somebody is actually running the show and making the decisions, and that includes movies. And until then, the contracts are let and the commitments are made. Also, the new person at HQ, as I keep saying, Alex Kurtzman's contract is up in December of 2026. Will it be renewed? Will it not be renewed? Is somebody already waiting in the wings? Is nobody waiting in the wings? They just decide to let it rest and focus on movies for a while? You kids are all about to have lived through a whole Star Trek era. Maybe. And everybody can be old. There we go. Well, we suddenly hit a burst of actual AMA questions here. You want to see a book or a panel or something focusing? Yes, I say this all the time. 1994 was peak Star Trek. It was insane. And I was there for 3 months in the spring before we moved full time trying to wrap up TNG. But I saw it all. Saw it all. But you're absolutely right. All of that happening. What? Oh, your humble Trek servant, maybe I should say, unless you're consuming Trek the way you do, nourishment. Hey, Trek reviewer, it would have been interesting to see the dynamic between Wesley and Sito. Very true. Very true. But if it had been Wesley or Ro, would they have had Sito in that? That was kind of the point. Good way to put this, John. When everything shakes out, absolutely. Do you see a general change in direction coming? Are we due for another break? I think Paramount, whoever is running Paramount, would be stupid to let Star Trek go untouched for years. Now, technically, it wasn't untouched, between, there were 3 movies in the fallow years. But to me, that was just not, it wasn't satisfying story-wise. I'm glad it happened. I'll never knock the J.J. Kelvin movies. I'm so glad they were alternate universes. Most brilliant thing ever. But it didn't feed the hunger. I said that at the time. Everybody was so enraptured with coming from the jaws of, banishment. We won't have Star Trek for 20 years. A movie. And people were and a big budget movie. And J.J. Abrams is going to, big, flashy. Star Trek has arrived. It's going to be a new level, a new pedestal, a new pinnacle. It's like, it's going to be a 2-hour movie. Good or bad, rich or poor, it's going to be a 2-hour movie. When do we get episodes again? I said that then. Didn't want to poo-poo the movie, but I said that then. And that's still in play. So is that what's going to happen? If we have a break, will it be a TV break and they lean into movies? I don't know. Will they do some animation? I don't know. But it'd be just a case of whoever's in charge wants to get their people in place to run the franchise, much less to greenlight the movies or not, whoever's doing those. What about decisions about, the whole thing about just streaming? Where would a new series be? Continually to be on streaming, which transcends the Star Trek question. There's so many things and decisions to make. What about TV movies on streaming, smaller budget? Forget Section 31. Don't torpedo the format, or the minis, the 2 and 3-parter. And whatever happened to the poor Wrath of Khan, the Khan in Paradise podcast, drama turned podcast. Yeah. Oh, this is the other thing. I've mentioned this before. Tawny's workplace comedy. Yeah. Who would greenlight that? And when does it get decided? Is it on permanent pause, not just to be developed, but until the dust settles over here? Who's calling the shots? That's totally I can see. Totally I can see. Yeah, I saw some mid-level producer, not a writer, but a producer actually talking on socials about what's wrong with for all the things to juggle, time, budget, money, distribution, whatever. That he was saying, how about an 18 episode season, which would not be 26 or even 22, but it would be better than 10 or 12. Give people a chance to have a real variety again. Yeah. Of live action. Yes, absolutely. That's the only thing we mean, right? Um, Gang, I think we're at the end of the chat. It's been a pleasure being with everybody today and kind of a flexy kind of week. Look, I'm excited because in just a little over a week, I'm going to be back at homegrown Oklahoma convention, SoonerCon, that's getting bigger all the time. This year with Garrett and Ethan and moi. I don't have to be all the Trek. So just go to SoonerCon.com. If you're in the lower Great Plains, the Southwest, you can make it over. It's so reasonable. It's a really reasonable admission rate. The room rates. It's not going to cost you to spend an extra weekend at SoonerCon. It'll be a ton of fun, and SoonerCon is very accepting. It's a wonderful island of acceptance and diversity, if you know what I mean. And they make a big, and it's a good old fashioned fan con with a charity to support. And I'm looking forward to seeing those two galoots and myself. I'm doing a guest next week, and then after that, going to take a couple of weeks off, at least 1 week off, and hibernate while we're on the road. It's too crazy trying to be subtle to do. I don't know my schedule yet, so it's hard to plan, and being somewhere where I can stream. So we'll have a week off there that week post-con, and then we'll see. Should be back the next Tuesday. And with that, gang, I'm just going to throw out the reminder here that as you travel around, July's coming up. If you're in California, be happy to try to work out a Trekland Treks with you for in and out of Comic-Con San Diego or anytime this summer. If your travel plans, business or vacation, bring you to California. I'd love to do a Trekland Treks with you. My day tours of location film sites, real ones that you select with my help. I've got the menu. We'll work it out. And of course, we'll deal with traffic and just all those intangibles. I take the worry off of your shoulders, including the driving. It's concierge. We pick you up, we bring you back, and have an awesome day in between your own customized away mission, TreklandTreks.com, or head over to LarryNemecek.com and do the same thing. Of course, I wouldn't be anywhere right now streaming without all of our Patreons. So thank you, all of our TTL Club, right? Chuck A., good to see you today. James Kerwin, Diana Hopkins, Halberd Gunn Johnson, Lawrence Todd, Greg Wickstrom, Keith Mitchell, Mitch Keith, sorry about that guy, Andrew Dazimski, Justin Weir, Josh Patton, Pranakasha Productions, Chris Jiggins, Keith Rombach, and Comedy Forecast. And our live wires too, Rob McLean, Byron Bailey, J.R. Poole, Gary Williams, James Durovich, Dave Gregory, Dan Leckie, and Casey Shafsky. It's very easy. We're getting on down, well, to the middle of the month. Still have the rest of the month for jumping in for next. $5, $10, patreon.com. You know how that works. /Trekland Live. I sure appreciate everybody helping out. For the call out every week, the live wires will get your back order of some of our earlier Portal 47, guest interviews. Hey, the Trek Files. I said it was 2 for Tuesdays. Trek Files part. Did you enjoy Ron Moore last week? That just flowed like butter once we got going. It was his idea and his topic, and we had a hoot. And part 2 is out now, where we look at the other wacky parts of Gene Roddenberry's 1976 album. People last night on the Trek Files Tonight on Discord were like, an album? I'm like, it's before tapes. How else could you share media off the printed word with fans besides more filmed episodes and movies? It was a stopgap. No social media, no quickie video. So yeah. Inside Star Trek, the 76 album. Ron and I talking about it again. We have such a great wrap up to our season 13 coming on down the line. The finale is an awesome one too, but I'll let you all hear about that when it gets there in a few weeks. So the Trek Files, wherever fine podcasts, thetrekfiles.com is Memory Alpha, our home there with all the hot links back end. The whole archive is there. Have you? You know what? You can go to the whole thing and scroll up and down, but of course you can also search and replace if you're looking for Dorothy Fontana, or you're looking for TNG, or you're looking for David Gerald, or whatever you might be looking. Bob Justman, just Gene Roddenberry. You're looking for something, somebody. Name a writer, director, historian, or a fan, an actor even. You can scroll and get the whole series over there. It's awesome. I'm so glad we finally developed that because they were buried on the Facebook page, right? Speaking of Facebook, that's one of our places you can catch Larry's Trekland. But YouTube, please like and subscribe us on YouTube if you haven't already. Also, Instagram is good too. I do a lot of fun little bits and pieces, reels and shorties on Instagram. Of course, Twitter X and Blue Sky is where I'm in for the short in and outs, okay? Portal47.net. If you just want to jump in with the Portales and deep dive all year long and find out all the Star Trek you had no idea about. Yeah. I wish there was some way we could get Michael Glick to a con, but until we can, just like with Bob Parker. Bob Butler, the original director of The Cage, who's passed now, but was our first open house guest. And then 3 years later, I was able to get him to San Diego with his son's help. Those are the kind of moments that are just awesome. And they don't necessarily have to be ancient days either. They're all good. So much Star Trek nobody gets to hear about from the creators, the people that actually bake the cake that the shiny icing of acting is put on. And that's what Portal is all about. You think we deep dive here, that's what it's all about there. So it's good to see everybody. Thanks for joining us. I will release you to the rest of your Tuesday Trek now, and just say, everybody, I'm about to go get a couple of booster shots. So please stay healthy, do all the things. And oh, Lordy, stay awoke. I mean, eyes open. I mean, check the sources. I mean, have some context. Double check what you hear if it sounds outrageous. Politely ask if they swivel the camera 90 degrees, if you have that ability. But just take care of yourselves out there, man. Okay? In other words, Trek well, everybody.